Over the years, roller coasters have found many ways to send riders upside down. Most states in the country offer a large variety of different ways to throw riders for a loop. In my last State of Stats episode, we looked at how many inversions each state had. Today we are going to see where it all started for each state. This is State of Stats, the first inversion in each state. While most states in the country have had coasters with inversions, there's a small handful of states that have never had an inversion. A moment of silence for that small handful. As always, we will go in alphabetical order by state. At the end of the video, I will show which inversions gave the most first inversions for a state. Maybe I'll even show which manufacturers gave the most states their first inversion. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Time will tell. The YouTube algorithm is pretty upset with me for skipping a week of posting, so help me win back his favor by dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. You may think he's not watching, but trust me, he is.
Hello, Ronnie. I know that you skipped a week of posting, and now it's time to pay.
Alabama. The first inversion in Alabama was the double corkscrew. This could be found on Corkscrew at the Alabama State Fair. This operated at the fair from 1982 to 1986. This was the basic aero corkscrew model, the first of many that we will see in this video. This coaster started at Old Chicago, operating there from 1975 to 1980. After its time at the Alabama State Fair, it went off to Canopy Lake Park. Perhaps we'll see this coaster a few more times in this video. Arizona. The first inversion in Arizona was a loop. 2 loops, in fact. These can be found today on Desert Storm at Castles and Coasters. As of right now, these are the only operating inversions in the state. When Hot Wheels Twin Mill Racers opens later this year, the state will triple its current inversion count. Arkansas. Here we'll find another loop for the first inversion. This loop was on Roaring Tornado at Magic Springs. This aero shuttle loop coaster operated at the park from 1980 to 1989. We'll see this coaster later again at another park in this video. California. California was home to the first modern inversion in the world to open, with a double corkscrew. This could be found on Corkscrew at Knott's Berry Farm. While there were 4 of these models that opened that same year in 1975, this was the first of the 4 to open. Corkscrew operated at Knott's Berry Farm from 1975 to 1989. While this was the first modern steel inversion in the world to open, this won't be the earliest inversion that we'll see in this video. Colorado. Remember Roaring Tornado from Magic Springs? That will also give Colorado its first inversion, being a loop. This was relocated from Magic Springs and opened at Elitch Gardens in 1990 as Sidewinder. This was relocated once again with the park after the 1994 season. The future of this coaster seems up in the air, being standing but not operating since 2022. Connecticut. This is the first state in the video with 2 different types of inversions as its first, being a loop and a cobra roll. These can be found on Zoomerang at Lake Compounds, opening in 1997. This is a typical Vekoma boomerang. Florida. Here we will find another double corkscrew. This was on Python at Busch Gardens, Tampa, opening in 1976 and operating until 2006. This was one of the earlier aero corkscrew models, opening only 1 year after the model first debuted. Georgia. Schwarzkopf makes its first appearance in this video, giving Georgia its first inversion with 2 loops. These can be found on Riddler Mindbender, which opened in 1978. While the ride may not run as good as it used to, I still thought it was pretty fun, but nothing compared to its sister coaster in Texas. We'll talk about that one later. Idaho. Another coaster would give 2 states their first inversion with a double corkscrew. This is on Corkscrew at Silverwood. This was relocated from Knott's Berry Farm and opened at Silverwood in 1990, gracing California and Idaho with their first inversions ever. Illinois. Here we will find another double corkscrew, on one of the 4 original aero corkscrews to open in 1975. This was Chicago Loop at Old Chicago. This operated at the park from 1975 to 1980. We saw this coaster already at Alabama for their first inversion, and this coaster is still not done gracing stage with its first inversion. We'll see this coaster one more time in this video. Indiana. The first inversion in Indiana was a loop. This could be found on Afterburner at Fun Spot Park, an aero shuttle loop coaster that operated at the park from 1991 to 2008. This was relocated from Boardwalk and Baseball in Florida, where it opened as Aero's prototype for this model in 1977. Iowa. Another loop gives another state its first inversion. This was on Dragon at Adventureland, a Hopkins looping coaster that operated at the park from 1990 to 2019. This had 2 loops on it, and these would be the only inversions in Iowa until 2016 when Monster opened. Kentucky. Here we will find one of the earliest inversions in the country. This was a loop on Loop-de-Loop at Fontaine Ferry Park. This was a wooden looping coaster that opened in 1905, built by Centrifugal Roller Coaster Company. Earlier inversions like this were a rare thing in the time. Only a small handful of these opened in the early decades of the 1900s. We'll see a few more of these later in the video. And as in later, I mean right now. Louisiana. Another loop on another Loop-de-Loop. This one at White City, opening in 1906. This was also built by Centrifugal Roller Coaster Company. Not much is known about this coaster, except that there was a fatal accident that occurred in 1906. Maryland. The first inversion in Maryland was a loop on Looping Star at Jolly Roger Amusement Park. Park. This Schwarzkopf looping star operated here from 1984 to 1985. We'll see this coaster one more time at another state. Massachusetts. Another loop from another loop-de-loop. This loop-de-loop operated at Revere Beach from 1900 to 1902. Not much is known about this coaster, and I couldn't find any photos of it, just a souvenir from the ride. This looks very similar to the other loop-de-loops mentioned earlier. Michigan. The first inversion in Michigan was a double corkscrew on Corkscrew at Michigan's Adventure. This opened in 1979. Nothing outstanding about this one. It's the basic Aero corkscrew model. It's still going strong to this day. Minnesota. Here we will find another Aero corkscrew coaster with Corkscrew at Valley Fair, but this one has a loop and a double corkscrew. Corkscrew opened at Valley Fair in 1980, and to this day, these are the only two inversions that the park has ever had. Mississippi. This one I can't really say counts as an inversion, as the track itself does not do any inversions, but two of the cars on the coaster go upside down. This is on Rolling Thunder at Paradise Pier Fun Park. This is an SBF Visa with the hamster wheel cars. These cars flip riders upside down. While this doesn't count as an inversion, this is the only coaster in Mississippi that sends its riders upside down in some kind of way. Missouri. The first inversion here was a loop, found on Loop-de-Loop at Electric Park. This opened in 1902 and it operated until sometime between 1904 and 1906. I couldn't find any photos of this coaster either. I could only find photos of the park itself. This was very likely similar to the other Loop-de-Loop coasters in its era. Nevada. Two different types of inversions were the first for Nevada. Two loops and a double corkscrew. These can be found on Canyon Blaster at Adventure Dome, which opened in 1993. This is the most intense, small-scale air looper that I've been on. This ride rips through its layout way faster than it should, or maybe it just feels that way because it's indoors. Either way, it's my favorite small-scale air looper. New Hampshire. The first inversion in New Hampshire was a double corkscrew. We've seen this coaster twice already in this video. This coaster started at Old Chicago at Chicago Loop, being the first inversion for Illinois, then was relocated to the Alabama State Fair, giving Alabama their first inversion. And this coaster would grace one more state with its first inversion as Canopy Corkscrew, operating at the park from 1987 to 2021. This is the first time a coaster has covered 3 different states within the same video for this series. Way to go, Chicago Loop / Corkscrew / Canopy Corkscrew. It's a shame that this ride was closed recently, as this was one of the original 4 Aero corkscrews that opened in 1975. New Jersey. Another loop from another loop-de-loop from Centrifugal Roller Coaster Company. This one opened at Young's $1 Million Pier in 1902 and operated until 1912, which is a pretty long lifespan for these types of coasters. New York. Here we will find the oldest coaster in the video, dating back to 1895. Flip Flat Railway at Paul Boynton's Sea Lion Park gave New York its first inversion, being a loop. This was also the first inversion in the country. This park was located where Luna Park / Coney Island is today. Coney Island would have their own wooden looping coaster, Loop-de-Loop, which is much more widely known about. North Carolina. White Lightning gave North Carolina its first inversion with a loop. This was a Schwarzkopf shuttle loop that operated at Carowinds from 1977 to 1988. This coaster operates today at Gold Reef City in South Africa. Ohio. Here we'll find the last pre-modern inversion in the video, with another loop. Loop-de-Loop at Olentangy Park opened in 1908. This was designed by Lena Beecher, who also designed Flip Flat Railway in New York. This loop-de-loop was his attempt to modify his design and make it less intense and more enjoyable for riders. While this newer design was less intense, it was still too intense for most people, and the ride never gained popularity. Oklahoma. The first inversion in Oklahoma was a loop on Silver Bullet at Frontier City. This opened at the park in 1986, and still giving the slowest lift hill experience to this day. This was relocated from Jolly Roger Amusement Park in Maryland, where it gave the first inversion to Maryland as well. Oregon. The first and only coaster that we'll see from Pinfari in this video gave Oregon its first inversion, with Looping Thunder, which had a loop. This was the common Pinfari Zyklon ZL42 model. This opened in 1996 and operated until 2017. Pennsylvania. The first inversion for Pennsylvania was also the first modern steel inversion on the East Coast, with the loop on Super Duper Loop at Hershey Park. This is pretty much a mini version of New Revolution at Magic Mountain. Not the most thrilling coaster by any means, but perfect for somebody's first coaster with an inversion. Rhode Island. This state makes a rare appearance in this series, with the only inversions that it's ever had, being a loop and a double corkscrew. These inversions could be found on Loop Corkscrew at Rocky Point Park. This Aero Loop Screw opened in 1984 and operated until 1995. We'll see this coaster again later. South Carolina. Another Aero Corkscrew gives another state its first inversion with a double corkscrew. This was Corkscrew at Magic Harbor. This opened in 1975, being one of the 4 original of this model, and operated until 1977. This still operates today in Columbia. Tennessee. The last of the 4 original Aero corkscrews would give Tennessee its first inversion with a double corkscrew. This was on Wabash Cannonball at Opryland, USA, opening at the park in 1975 and closing with the park in 1997. Texas. This is the only state to have 2 separate coasters with its first inversions. Both coasters offering a loop, one being Greased Lightning at Six Flags Astro World, the other being Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas. Both of these coasters opened in 1978. One of these coasters may have opened before the other, but they both offer the same first inversion for the state, being a loop. Shockwave is still going strong today. Grease Lightning closed in 2005 with the park. Utah. No surprise that we'll find Utah's first inversion at Lagoon, with the 2 loops on Colossus the Fire Dragon. This Schwarzkopf coaster opened at the park in 1983 and still gives a strong ride to this day, packing a pretty serious punch with its 2 loops. Virginia. While Loch Ness Monster is one of, if not the most famous inversions out there, it wasn't the first inversion for Virginia. The first inversion for Virginia was a loop, but it was on King Cobra at King's Dominion. This Schwarzkopf shuttle loop coaster opened in 1977, 1 year before Loch Ness Monster, and operated at King's Dominion until 1986. This would go on to be relocated in multiple parks throughout its life. This coaster still operates today at Hopi Hari in Brazil as Catapult. Washington. Here we'll be reunited with Looped Corkscrew from Rocky Point Park in Rhode Island, and its loop and double corkscrew. After leaving Rocky Point Park, this opened as Wild Thing at Wild Waves in 1997, giving Washington State its first inversions. There was only one other coaster in the state to have inversions, but that's come and gone, leaving Wild Thing as the only coaster in the state with inversions today. West Virginia. This state has only ever had one inversion, being a loop. This was on Thunderbolt Express at Camden Park, which opened at the park in 1988 and operated until 1999. Thunderbolt Express was relocated from Kings Island, being Demon at that park. Thunderbolt Express stopped operating in 1999. There were claims that the ride was undergoing repairs and would reopen in 2002. However, these repairs never happened and the ride was scrapped in 2004. Wisconsin. The last inversion of the video is the only inversion that Wisconsin has ever had, being a corkscrew. This is found on Hades 360 at Mount Olympus. Hades opened in 2005, but it wouldn't have its corkscrew added until 2013, when the ride underwent some refurbishments and got new Timberliner trains. And there you have it, that's the first inversion to open in each state. Let's see which inversions dominated this list. Now what about manufacturers? And that will do it for this episode of State of Stats. We've been focusing on inversions for the past few episodes in this series. Let's break away from that for the next episode. Which stat do you guys want to see in the next episode? Just let me know in the comments down below. Alright guys, I've wrapped the video up here. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next loop.